All right, here again, apologies. The last reading didn't went very well because my microphone was switched off. So now it's switched on. I can see it's running. So apologize if you were just watching my mouth and couldn't lip read what I was reading. I was saying, hi and welcome. We're going today into the numbness bar. And in the last reading, we were going into the window of tolerance. So you find all the videos in the playlist of the book reading. And so hi and welcome. Let's go straight into that. The numbness bar. Repression and expression of feelings and emotions. Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. That's a quote from Sigmund Freud. It's been a tough period of time during the pandemic, and many of us have experienced emotional upheavals in our bodies. The immune and emotional responses are two connected reservoirs in equilibrium with each other. Repressed emotions weakens the immune system, creating symptoms of dis-ease, unease, and illness. And let's be honest, who likes to show that they aren't in control? And when we go down the path of trying to control our emotions, suppressing them with organization, food, humor, entertainment, substance of abuse, pornography, or whatever your distraction go-to is, if you pretend you are sailing on calm waters when there is a storm raging inside, you doesn't really like it and it doesn't really help, right? To some extent, feeling your feelings seems wrong for most people. So we grow up to being taught that feelings and emotions are not okay to have, especially if they are negative. To avoid dealing with them, therefore, it seems easier to suppress them as they arise. So the problem is, by doing this, we decrease our ability to feel and we allow them to enter our cognitive minds and numb the rest of ourselves from the neck downwards. This is the abandonment of the experience of our physical body and is represented in the numbness bar. The numbness bar map shows the 4 core feelings and emotions: fear, anger, sadness, and joy. Generally speaking, most people's numbness bar is around 65 to 80%. So when our numbness bar is this high or higher, we avoid emotional relationships with others and are unable to engage on a level of really being together. So just show a quick picture of the numbness bar. Here you can see it. Hopefully not overexposed. This is the numbness bar where it is normally on 75%, 80%, and this is where we want to go into emotional intelligence. All right, let's get deeper into the numbness bar map and explain that. So when we get triggered by other people or situations in our environment, the natural expression of anger is at low level, isn't usually aired. We very rarely tell others, I feel a little annoyed at the moment, and we just as rarely hear the replay, okay, thank you for sharing that. So when we suppress our emotions, they stay within, darkening our perception and spilling out of us when we can no longer contain them, rearing their head against the unconstructive burst of anger, sadness, and so on. So looping again and again. We usually allow an emotion to simmer, then cook until we can't contain it no any longer. It then rises up inside, eventually boiling over into explosive rage. It's the same for all emotions we suppress. Fear usually explodes into panic, joy into ecstasy, and sadness into pain, tears, and sobbing. So when the pressure rises this far, we need to explode or implode to release it. Ways in which we can implode include self-hatred, depression, contraction, physical and psychological illness, and feeling numb, collapse, and shut down. When we suppress our emotion, the pressure may ebb, but will, without doubt, reappear later. The next time a similar situation triggers that emotion. When we allow this to happen, we feel generally numb most of the time and experience regular episodes of implosion and explosion. As you know, now, as you know by now, being tuned into your somatic sensory releases oxytocin. And when oxytocin is released during stressful times, it increases empathy, trust, and connection. In doing so, oxytocin nudges you to tell someone sorry, I need to say that again. In doing so, oxytocin nudges you to tell someone how you feel, so that instead of bottling your feelings up, you are able to vocalize, realize emotions, and get the support that you need. This is part of our built-in social engagement system and how your nervous system works. The release of neurotransmitter also enables you to notice when others close to you are struggling, so that you are able to support each other. When we do this, it is co-regulation from a place of love and care at the apex. I really enjoy that reading. So how to release internalized emotions? In order to drop the mental loop that tires to control your emotions, allow them to happen. It might sound scary, but dropping into an emotion helps you bringing awareness to any needs that isn't being addressed, as well as release the pressure that are built up through this suppression. We can take a core emotion out of the equation by expressing it as internalized as intensely as possible for about 90 seconds. So first, tune into by noticing how the emotions physically feels and its location within your body. Then take off the brakes, resisting an urge to suppress. By doing this, you'll no doubt have a few minutes of discomfort, and I invite you to allow yourself to feel what wants to come up. Express the emotions as exactly as you can and in a physical and exaggerated way. This way you are sure to find the sweet spot. If you feel sad, express it by crying or sobbing. If you feel fear, express it by shaking. And if you feel anger, express it by screaming. You could do that into a pillow to avoid alarming the neighbors. And if you feel joy, express it in some kind of jubilation, such as jumping and yelling out a yes, yes, and yes. So expressing loud, observe that feeling of discomfort is, again, I'm sorry. Observe as the feeling of discomfort is. It was a nice, warm, sunny summer day in nature today. Observe as the feeling of discomfort is released, just like opening a pressure valve. So expressing low-level feelings in real time. So when we, however, acknowledge low-level feelings in the moment, we can increase our capacity to express them authentically in real time. And the more we lower the numbness bar to around 5 to 10%, the more we can be honest when we feel anger or another emotion, so that we don't explode or implode when the numbness bar is reached. Anyone who engages with another person, whether as part of a couple or as a friend, family member, practitioner within a team, and so on, must be able to acknowledge that feelings are always present and they need to be expressed. When you engage with your feelings in the present moment by noticing where this feeling sits within your body, you can express it or make adjustments. Then it won't be suppressed, simmer, cook, and at some point implode or explode. We can even lower the numbness bar to below 10%, which practice, let's say you're sitting at the computer and can feel discomfort. Maybe you can more easily identify the physical element first, such as tension in your back, maybe the emotional sense of discomfort. Sorry, again, that one. Maybe you can more easily identify the physical elements first, such as tension in your back. And maybe the emotional sense of discomfort is stronger. So, which emotion is the physical discomfort causing, or vice versa? Where does the emotions you can identify sit within your physical body? And is there low-level anger or frustration? Now you're aware of your physical discomfort and the connected emotions. It's possible to consciously decide to take a break, have a stretch, or find a more comfortable position. After doing so, you can check in with how you feel again and notice whether the emotion has diminished. At any time, notice which feelings are present when you tune in. You usually notice different levels of different feelings. So name the most prevalent feeling. And is it anger? Is it fear, sadness, or joy? Where is it sitting in your physical body? Give it a percentage according to its intensity. Then notice why it's present. For example, I feel kind of 10% anger when you say this word stupid. Right now I feel about 15% fear in my stomach because I can't keep up with my work. I feel 30% sad because you left without saying goodbye. I feel 20% of joy waiting for my lover's visit later this evening. This might sound trivial, but it's a very important skill to learn. We need to be able to recognize our low-level feelings to be able to increase our emotional intelligence. The more we bring the numbness bar down, the easier we can express our feelings as they happen in the moment. Here you learn to notice your desires, your limits, your body, and how to express yourself in a rational dynamic with others, more fluent. All right. Welcome, gentlemen. You have mastered the art of pleasure, but you're not the type to settle for the ordinary, right? You're after the extraordinary. You're not just driving a car in life, you want the Tesla experience in every aspect, especially in your intimate relationships and your sexuality. So it's not about dissatisfaction, it's about exploring deeper. You know greatness, now you seek to be the best. More presence, more connection, not just reaching a goal, but transforming it. Perhaps you have heard about Tantra and feel intrigued by its promises, but what does it truly offer? Imagine not just giving your partner moments of pleasure, but leading them into an ecstatic state and keeping them there, an orgasmic state of being for both of you. I understand the subtleties that make good great. For over 20 years, I've guided men like you to deepen their understanding, to discover what lies beyond the climax. So to take private sessions with me that will put you right on target what you want. All right. When you feel vulnerable, a common emotion is unease while speaking in public, or so I'm a little bit distracted at the moment. A common emotion to experience is unease while speaking in public or so. Maybe you can relate. How do you feel? Nervous, disassociated, or lost for words? I'm guessing vulnerable in some way. Realistically, in situations such as this, there isn't always an option to take 5 minutes out alone in order to self-regulate. And as I already shared, one thing I do whenever I feel nervous while I speak in public is to own and express how I feel in the moment. I notice my feelings and share them in real time. Doing this enables me to let out any build-up of discomfort, and I find myself suddenly back to where I want to be, sharing my topics in an articulated way. This is a very empowering way to self-regulate. Some might shy away from this method, worried that people will think and focus instead on keeping up a facade of strength. By showing your vulnerability, you in fact show a rare strength, and by showing yourself as you are comes the possibility of connection. There are different ways of bypassing vulnerability. One is when we don't ask for what we want and resort to shadow behavior to get our needs met. Another example is the shallow small talk of conventional socializing, when we talk about superficial things to fill in the gaps of uncomfortable silence. I really find it difficult to engage in this kind of conversations without feeling awkward. It's a state I don't want other people to see me in. And when this happens, what I occasionally do, instead of being honest about how I feel and showing my vulnerability, is default to talking about my ideas or certain concepts I have learned. It's a tricky strategy. About a year ago, I spontaneously chose to be more honest, and I was traveling on a train from the airport terminal to another when the man next to me stuck up the kind of conversation commonly in US to have with strangers. "Hi," he said loudly. "How are you doing today and where are you going?" Immediately a sense of awkward shyness materialized within me, and I replied with a couple of words and imagined he expected to be asked back in return. Instead of doing that, I decided to express my genuine feelings in the moment. I said, I have this uncomfortable feeling in my body when I don't respond in the conditioned way to meaningless conversation. When I go against the grain, I feel kind of shy with the hope that we'll arrive soon as possible at the terminal, so I can avoid feeling what I feel. His answer surprised me. He said, yes, I feel the same way, but I can't stand the silence. I need to fill the gap with something to avoid the awkward feelings. I thanked him for sharing that and told him it made me feel relaxed to hear that. I went on to say that throughout my life I'd learned that this shy, awkward feelings was a weakness, and I needed to hide it at all costs so as not to be judged. And he nodded and agreed. Then I suggested, how about we allow ourselves to just be seen in our awkwardness, shyness that we have an urge to hide, just allowing ourselves to be without feelings and acknowledge them silently until we get to the station. He smiled and agreed, and we were in this together, and it feels like an eternity. When we arrived, we both agreed that it had been both the worst and the nicest train ride ever. We thanked each other and shared a hug before continuing our journey in different directions. That was an interesting experience. Lowering our numbness bar is a key to unlocking the door of awareness. When you can be in constant connection to how you feel, you know your desires and limits, and intelligently express low-level feelings, you'll be able to connect more deeply with others that you encounter. Obstacles to pleasure and the pleasure ceiling. Some people find it difficult to feel pleasure for themselves directly, relying solely in the indirect route via the confirmation of other people's pleasure, whether in sounds, words, and gestures. Sometimes this due to having a high numbness bar of joy. So when we reach a certain level of feelings, we can get overwhelmed, even when it comes to pleasure. For this reason, many have learned to push this feeling down too. The result is we feel less or nothing at all. Why would we push away joy? Well, a little bit might be nice, but too much could evoke feelings of gratitude. The pure joy of gratitude is challenging for many people to feel without dropping into the shadow of guilt, duty, fear of appearing needy, dependent, or vulnerable, or the urge to reciprocate. You may notice you can only take a certain amount of feelings coming in from the inflow before getting overwhelmed and having to stop. I call this reaching the pleasure ceiling. You might also notice that by allowing yourself to feel a little bit more each time and by welcoming the feelings that come up, your capacity to feel pleasure more exquisitely increases. And this expands your pleasure ceiling and lowers your numbness bar of joy. It's good to remind yourself that within the process there is no meaning, goal, or destination. It's only about being present in your skin and following your pleasure. This can be challenging for many who associate pleasurable sensual touch as foreplay leading to sex. Numbness bar and the genitals. This can be an indicator of partial neurological shutdown, a nervous system response in order to protect against intense feeling and emotional memories that occurs from traumas. About 10 years ago, I began to practice Kegling, so pelvic floor exercises, but I did it to such an extent that I became so numb I couldn't feel much for 3 months, and this was pretty scary. So from my personal and professional experience, I consider Kegling good for women after giving birth to help create new muscle tone. However, this experience with voluntary control the muscles of the pelvic floor during sympathetic mobilization are generally misused to teach women to get tight in order to please men so that men can feel better for themselves. I've talked to midwives on the subject who all agreed that a normal workout practice such as walking or dancing is enough to tone the pelvic floor in general and after giving birth. And that extreme exercise promoted by some expert can create muscle tension. So you might wonder what the difference is between muscle strength and muscle tension. A strong muscle is not a tight but a relaxed one. Tighter does not equal stronger, it's just tighter. So to recap, when we utilize the engagement zone, we can actively create a safer environment. When we feel safe, the noticing brain is constantly activated and connected to all levels of the safe side of the nervous system, and as we saw in the polyvagal theory. The noticing brain remains active and observes processes within the following: the social engagement system, ventral vagus part of the parasympathetic system, mobilization, so the safe side of the sympathetic system, and immobilization, so the bliss state, dorsal vagus part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So when the noticing part of the brain is activated, it connects all the informations from the working brain, logical, amygdala, emotions, and reptilian brain shutdown mechanisms. Can you imagine how much insights we can gain when this happens? It truly is an awakening in itself. So whenever you notice shadow survival strategies coming up, it's also important to acknowledge that you are in survival mode and that they are involuntary active. What we want to aim for is authentically engaging with others in the moment by acknowledging our shadows and expressing our desires and limits. If we look at our shadow strategies as wrong, bad, or something to avoid, we miss out on the opportunity to learn from them and to heal. Through avoidance, we bypass the capacity we have to grow through past experience of trauma. Not being aware of our shadows is a kind of slumber at the opposite of the awakening process. So when we develop our capacity for somatic experience, we process our experiences, integrate our learning, and grow. With a stable base of self-care, we are able to face any shadows that become apparent and aren't afraid to dig deeper into what is profoundly possible. So when we don't avoid the pain of our shadows, we integrate them into self-knowledge and we expand and we evolve. So we can integrate our shadows by acknowledging and accepting them, then retraining our unconscious responses. We do this by lowering our numbness bar and engaging in feelings at the time as they occur. So first we acknowledge our feelings to ourselves, such as something is going on right now. I'm not sure what it is, but this is how I feel. My heart is beating more rapid, my legs feel shaky, and I can feel a burning sensation rising up. Just like an early warning system, when we are aware of the internal response of feeling what comes up moment to moment and the resistance of we feel inside towards certain people or types of behavior, we can trust the impulse and approach the subject that triggers the feeling immediately. Then, however we express our feelings, we find relief. We have an informed choice and can make rational decisions to behave in certain ways, such as leaving the situation that's causing us distress or engaging and expressing how we feel. An example might be, this makes me feel really sad. I need a moment to reflect on how I feel. Can you give me a little time? It is then possible to move on without having to go into survival mode. If you can't express yourself or you're in a situation that can't easily leave, you can observe your feelings and remind yourself that the situation is temporary, breathing through it for this limited time and recalibrate afterwards. When you lower the numbness bar, overwhelm doesn't happen. You can widen your window of tolerance because you are in connection with your feelings and you'll have a much better idea of how long you're able to tolerate in certain situations. By noticing how it feels for the nervous system to go through different neurological stages without dysregulating, shutting down, or going into rage, you maintain conscious awareness as your survival mechanism begins to kick in and therefore they take over. When we do this, the hybrid state is accessed during the feeling of safety, compassion, and openness between people during social engagement. And each person knows and expresses how they feel in the moment, and each knows and expresses their desires ask for permission, recognize their boundaries, and communicates their limits and respect the other one's desires and limits. So personal and interpersonal growth happens through play, fun, connection, and intimate relating. And this really is a lifelong practice of ever deepening richness. All right. Thank you so much for joining today. Please like and subscribe so that you get a notification about the next live streaming, what is about the empowerment map and empowerment and choices. If you think my reading sucks, what might be possible, please feel totally free to choose to buy the book on Amazon as a hard copy or as a paperback. And you can get as well the PDF and EPUB on my webpage to download and share with others. So if you resonate with that, please feel totally free. Again, thanks for joining today. I hope you enjoy the readings. I definitely enjoyed it today. And see you at the next reading, and love yourself. All right. Bye.